At the collapse of the Mycenae in about 1100 BCE, this left the Aegean region in a period of disorganization and a dark age. A lot of prior cultural development, including writing, had been destroyed or forgotten during this time. The mainland area around the Aegean Sea, the Aegean Islands, and the coastal areas of Asia Minor were all open to migration. So tribes moved in. Now the origins or time frame of these people, these tribes, are unknown, but they may have brought iron technology with them. By about 900 BCE, small immigrants formed distinct groups in this area. They live in self-sufficient, close-knit communities, and they all speak some form of the same language. The fusion of these immigrants and the locals become known as the Greeks. Around the 9th to 8th century BCE, we start to see city-states develop. Now, city-states, we've talked about them before, but they are autonomous regions having a city as its political, economic, religious, and cultural center. There were several regional powers. Some of the main ones were Athens, Corinth, and Sparta. Corinth was located on a major land and sea trade routes, and it was one of the oldest city-states, and it was the most powerful for a long time. So here is Corinth right here. Athens, which is located right here, was wealthy. It promoted democracy. It's also known for art and trade. Sparta, which is located right here, is known for its militaristic values. It was known as being very conservative. It was ruled by a warrior elite. So all these city-states that emerge, including these three big ones, they equal the rise of the Greeks. Now, what does it mean to be Greek? Well, to be Greek, you had to be living in the mainland Greece, or the Peloponnesus in the south, or Macedonia in the north, the Aegean Islands, and the western coast of Asia Minor. Also, there were some Greek colonies in Italy, Sicily, and Asia Minor. You also had to have some commonality, such as these Greek cultural ties that I have listed here. So they were tied together through a common language, although they were definitely different dialects, a culture, history, religion. They lived in similar climates, so that means they reacted to the environment in similar ways. They traded with each other, and at times they were loosely unified. Sometimes they were officially unified against a common enemy. By the 6th century BCE, Athens on the east coast of the mainland began taking over commercial and cultural preeminence. They established democracy, now not democracy as we'd like to define it today. This was controlled by the male elite. One of the things that we need to remember when we look at the Greeks is that the Greeks are known as being this great donator or originator of Western culture. We see them as the intellects, that they started Western civilization. But we also need to remember that the Greeks had relatively small numbers and they were in constant warfare. So they're a very violent people. Some of the events that we kind of need to look at very briefly, just so we can kind of get an outline when we're looking at the art, I have listed up here. So the Persian Wars began in the 5th century BCE, and this is when the Greek cities of Asia Minor had been engulfed by the Persian Empire. They revolted, and this initiated a series of conflicts between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire. So we call this the Persian Wars. In 480 BCE, the Persians invaded Greece, and they actually completely destroyed and sacked Athens. The Persian Wars ended in 479 BCE with the destruction of the Persian fleet. Athens emerges victoriously, and they end up becoming the leaders of the city-states after this and for a time. Next, we have the Peloponnesian War, which lasted from 431 to 404 BCE, and it was fought by Athens and its empire against the Peloponnesian League, which was led by Sparta. The end of this war resulted in the collapse of the Athenian Empire. In about 338 BCE, Philip II of Macedonia conquers Athens and other Greek cities. In 334 BCE, Alexander the Great of Macedonia consolidates his power in Greece and crushes the Persian army. He expands his empire to Syria and Phoenicia. In 331, he sacks Persepolis, and we talked about that, or we read about it in your book when we were talking about the Near East. In 323 BCE, Alexander the Great dies, and this kind of marks the collapse of Greek power. Now, this is a really brief and incomplete history of Greece. Greek history is very important to art, and that's why I kind of gave you this quick little rundown. But religion is inseparable to art. The Greeks are polytheistic, and their religion replaced the earth goddess worship that had been in this area. They have several creation myths. One of them is that everything began in chaos. Then the mother earth goddess Gaia formed, and she gave birth to the sky. The earth and sky bred, and earth gave birth to 12 titans, or giants. One of them, Cronus, had to separate his parents, earth and sky. So he cut off his father's genitals and threw them into the ocean. Cronus and his sister had children, but Cronus, who was probably a little bit worried about karma, he did just cut off his dad's genitals. He eats his children, and all except for Zeus. The reason he doesn't eat Zeus is because his sister/lover tricks him, and she has him eat a stone, and he thinks that he's eating Zeus, but he's really just eating a stone. So Zeus grows up, and he tricks his father into drinking something that makes him throw up. And so his father throws up all Zeus's brothers and sisters. So Zeus and his siblings, who are known as the gods, fought the Titans, who was like Cronus and all his brothers and sisters, for power. And the gods win. The gods live on Mount Olympus in the northeast corner of the Greek mainland. And gods have supernatural powers. They are immortal, but they look like humans and they have humans' weaknesses and emotions. So they actually do have flaws. Some of the most important gods I have depicted up here, Zeus, who's the supreme god, the sky god. We already heard about him. He's usually represented with a lightning bolt. Hera is the queen of the gods. She is Zeus's sister, also his wife, and she is the goddess of marriage. Poseidon is the god of the sea. He holds a trident. He's usually pretty easy to recognize in art. Hades is the god of the underworld. Apollo, who we'll see a lot, is the god of sun, light, truth, music, archery, and healing. Athena, who we'll also see a lot, is the goddess of wisdom, war, victory. She is the patron deity of Athens and civilization. And Aphrodite, who we heard about with that story with Paris and the Trojan War, she is the goddess of love. They also had creation myths for humans, of course. One myth says that all humans rose out of the soil. Another says that Zeus was upset because the original humans that he created did not honor the gods. So he flooded the earth and drowned all human beings, except for two. And it was a couple, a man and a woman. They survived in the flood on a boat, and afterwards they created the present human race from stones, which they threw over their shoulders onto the muddy land. Now, unlike the Egyptians, who have a very specific idea about the afterlife, remember they have to go through all these ceremonies to ensure that they survive into the afterlife. For the Greeks, the afterlife is really mysterious and cloudy and a bit scary. So that was kind of the quick and dirty version of Greek religion and Greek history. But now we got to focus on the art. So Greek art is separated into several periods, which I have listed up here. Greek art began in about 900 and it lasted into 31 BCE. The first period is known, which is the oldest period, is known as the geometric period. And it lasted from 900 to 700 BCE. And basically, ceramics had geometric forms on their vessels. So these are just two really good examples of the geometric style. The next period is known as the Orientalizing period. It lasted from 700 to 625 BCE. Pottery and its decoration were influenced by Egypt and the Near East, and usually the art looks something like this. The next period was the Archaic period. This lasted from 620 to 480 BCE. This is really when we start to see what we know as Greek art. We start to see sculpture and ceramics and things like that, but it's really considered to be an old style when compared to the advances of subsequent periods. But generally here is an example of an archaic piece that we'll talk about in the future. The next period is the Classic period, the Classical period, which lasted from 480 to 325 BCE. And it's also divided into 3 sub-periods, but we won't worry about that. But this is really when we get to see the rich Greek style that's so iconic of Greek art. And here's an example of the Classical period Greek sculpture. The last period is the Hellenistic period. The Hellenistic period lasted from 325 to 31 BCE. Now the term Hellenistic means Greek-like, and this is a time when Greek art and culture spread into the Eastern Mediterranean world and to non-Greek people. And these non-Greek people start to take on Greek cultural influences under Alexander the Great and afterwards. The history and art of ancient Greece ends with the fall of Egypt. We know that it was ruled by the Greeks till Roman times. It ends about 31 BCE with the death of Cleopatra. What we will see in Greek art, we will see that the Greeks are self-aware. They are self-confident. They developed a concept of human supremacy and responsibility into a worldview that demanded a new visual expression in art. Artists will study the human form to try to capture the essence of humanity in their art. We'll also see the concept of the other. And this means people who were not Greek. So the idea of human supremacy doesn't apply to everyone. It only applies to the Greeks. If you're Greek, then you're awesome. If you're not Greek, then you're the other. So people who do not share Greek cultural similarities or language are considered the other and are considered barbarians. So again, human supremacy only really it really means Greek supremacy. While the Egyptian art promoted permanence and continuity with very little change in style for almost 3,000 years, the Greeks are completely different. They are constantly improving or developing art and pushing it forward. Greeks are focused on balance and order, and we'll see that a lot in their art. Greek art, customs, and institutions and ideas have an enduring influence on the Western world, and we'll see that either art in the future will be responding to or responding against the ideas of Greek art. And you'll see that especially in your 102 course.